Welcome to Real BMX Racing, the podcast. Today's show is sponsored by 110% Nutrition, Answer BMX and BMX Connect, with a special shout out to Toby Henderson over at Send It BMX. Today's guest was a 2012 Olympic BMX team rider, one of your favorite BMX coaches, certified strength and conditioning coach, Arielle Verhaaren. Arielle, welcome to the show.
How did you get into BMX?
It's a great question. I got into BMX in 1990. I don't remember not riding a bike. My dad raced in the late 80s. He
Okay.
was a young dad and working at a local bike shop and took me to the track. And they said I was off training wheels at 2.5, and I was racing from the time I can remember. So early days in Utah, actually.
Okay. And so you said so it was 1990 or early 90s?
1990. Yeah. Yeah.
What was the so
I was,
what was your first bike?
I had a Redline Micro Mini.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you remember how that one got away from you, or do you still have that one?
Oh, the bike.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure my parents sold it to buy the next one. I think that's kind of how it went down the line. I mean, I was 5, so, and the next one was a GT Speed Series, and they were both
Nice.
chrome. Like back in the day, it was pretty cool to have chromed out bikes. My dad made sure it was all dialed. So
I used to race with a Robinson back then, so I know all about that right there. And
yeah.
I was mentioning that to the kids, like a year or two ago when I came back to race, and they just looked at me and he's like, "Man, you're old. Only old people ride chrome." Like, and I was like, oh, "Okay."
Chrome will make a comeback. It'll come back someday, I think.
Dude,
And it's hard to do
it's
with carbon fiber though, huh? Can't make
yeah,
a chrome carbon fiber.
I know, right? If you pull that off, sales will be through the roof.
Yeah.
But okay, so when you started racing, was it something that just came naturally to you since you started at such a young age, or was it something that just you had to work at it coming out
I
the
would
gate?
say probably a mix of both. My mom says, and I don't remember this, but when I was really young, I'm racing when I was 5. I mean, I would stop, I'd be winning, and I would stop on the last straight and wave to the crowd, and they'd be like, "Finish the race!" Like when you're super little, you just don't know.
Right, right.
And I started to get pretty good pretty quick, but there was a local girl who, her name was Alicia Headley, and we didn't realize it at the time, but she was Nag 1. And so I'm
Okay,
racing against this girl that's the best in the country, and we don't know it. And so she's always beating me at the local race. And
right.
so, my parents were like, well, we're not going to spend the money if she can't even win a local race to take her to a national event. And finally, someone convinced them, like, no, you don't understand. This girl's really good. And so they took me to my first national event when I was 10 years old. It
Okay.
was Cole Canyon in
Oh my
California,
gosh.
for anyone who
Yes,
remembers that track. Yeah.
I
So
do. I do.
we went there, and that girl took first, and I took second at my first national. And my parents were like, "Oh, okay, so I guess she's kind of
She
good."
is really.
And then, not long after that, that girl was kind of done racing, and yeah, I was traveling the country chasing nag plates.
So you've raced all over the U.S. and other countries as well, right?
Yeah, all
With
over.
that being said, what would you say the biggest difference is between our tracks and other countries?
Like the tracks or the programs, like the track specifically.
The track specifically.
Yeah, just the technicality. I mean, Um, my first international trips, I was surprised at how steep the jumps were. I loved it. I liked jumps when I was younger even. I would go and ride like dirt jumps, trails, things like that. So, um, I trained with a French coach for a couple of years, and I would go
Okay.
over there in the winter and just spend time on the French tracks, and they're incredible. Like just how they're built, and you just see
Mm.
these kids. I mean, and now we have a lot of kids on flat pedals, which is phenomenal, but back then there wasn't, right? Every kid was clipped in from a very young age. And so I would go to France and I'd see these 7-year-old kids on flat pedals, like pole manualing these huge steep doubles, and I would just be blown away. And those
Right.
kids grew up to be, Sylvain Andre and and Joris. And it's no wonder they're so good technically. I think it is. So I think the biggest difference, and I think it's changing. I think we're seeing a lot of progression. Tulsa's a great example of that. Like the Hardesty facility is phenomenal. The track is on the more technical scope for USA BMX, and
Right.
I think some
Right.
of the local tracks, Richmond BMX here where I live, they've done a pretty good job at kind of making it a little steeper and deeper than what we were kind of used to for a long time here in the US.
Okay. Okay. What would you say your most memorable race was throughout your career?
That's a tough one. It was a long career, a lot of races. I'd say the highlight for me was my World Cup win in Chula Vista in 2011. It was the first win of an American woman ever, which was really cool. And it was on home soil on the track I was training on. My
Let's
family
go.
was there, my husband was there, my friends were there. It was pretty special. Hard to beat that.
Okay. Okay. Well, now, out of all your racing, which track or which race would you wish that you could have a redo at, and why?
Oh, I redo that. Um, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that. Um, I'd say the World Championships in Birmingham,
Mhm.
England, I was in fourth or third. Sorry, I was in third the entire race, and I came out of the last turn, and I realized I was going to qualify for the Olympics, and I just think I got so excited, and I got pipped at the line, and so I lost like a bronze medal position there, um, just because I was not focused. So that was one I would have been like, just go to the finish line, dude, finish it out.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I think I was on really good form in South Africa in 2010 at the Worlds there, and I just got tangled up in a turn in the main event. But I don't know. I don't. It's hard to have any regrets. I think this far out,
Right.
they
Right.
were just all, they're all good memories for me now. I think if you'd asked me right after I retired, I probably would have a lot more passion and response.
Okay. What would you say the difference between your dream bike build from when you first started racing to your dream bike build when you became like pro? What would you say the major difference was?
Oh, well, I mean, when you're a little kid, you just aspire to be on whatever bike the pros are on, right? So when I was a
Right.
little kid, I mean, I remember I wanted a GT because the GT was the team in the 90s with all the pros. And so I was
Right.
really excited when I got one of those. And then that's kind of all you cared about. I had a Trek, like when Trek briefly entered BMX, and they
Mm.
had a terrible frame design, but it looked really cool. And Wade Booch rode it, and I like thought he was really cool. And
Right.
but then, as I became a pro and at the end of the career, it was about performance. I
Right.
wanted a bike that performed well, and I was lucky enough to work with some companies that would do some custom geometry with me or try to work with me on different products, different crank lengths. I mean, for the longest time, it was like you had an option of 170 and 175 or 180, right? 185. And, having like an intermediate crank length wasn't a thing. And so towards the end of my career, after asking for so long, it was like, oh, 172, that sounds great, and now we have 177 options. So yeah, for me at the end, it was more about performance than anything.
Now, did you always work on your own bikes, or did you have somebody help you do it for you, or you just didn't want to touch it, or you just not don't let nobody touch my bike?
I've always done my own. There's a few mechanics that I've trusted over my career.
Mhm.
But my dad worked at a bike shop growing up, and so he knew once I was going to start traveling, my mom was primarily the one taking me to races, that I needed to know how to work on my bike. So
Right.
I remember probably being 11 or 12, like pretty young, and going to the bike shop, and he took it completely apart and was like, figure out how to put it together. And it took me a long time, and it wasn't right. And but it was great because I had to learn how to fly with a bike, how to work on a bike, and then
Right.
I was a shop rat. From the time I was a teenager, I was working at the bike shop. So I'm grateful because I learned how to do a lot of the things on my own and able to work on my own. And then when I was traveling with Team USA, we had a few like really good mechanics,
Right.
and then there were a few that I was like, no, don't. I got it. So, um, but for the most part, the guys that get contracted for the team are pretty fantastic. So.
Okay. Also, yeah, when it came for me, it's like I used to be able to take them apart, put them back together, but then all of a sudden there was something that happened in the time frame where I started having extra parts. And so I'm like, where would this come from? So then I
Yeah.
was like, all right, we'll strip it back down. So we'd strip it back down and I'd get that part in, but then now I'm holding on to something else. And I'm like, I'm done with this because I'm like, I gotta trust myself to ride this bike. And so I'm like, I'm not gonna trust this. Like, and I tried it again when I came back and I did something with my front end and I was looking and I was like, man, I was like, the bolts, they're sticking way far out. And they're like, you put that on backwards, dude. Like your tire could pop right off. And I was like, awesome. It was like, so I got done with that and just, I was like, yeah, no, I'll just leave it to the guys over there who know what they're doing. Just let me get out there and
Yeah.
pedal and pedal. But so with how did you get into the coaching aspect of everything? Did you just roll into it from your pro career, or is it something that you felt like you wanted to do the whole time while you were riding, like you saw it coming?
Yes and no. So my parents were very much of the opinion that my education mattered,
Mhm.
and I could race BMX as long as I got good grades. I turned pro when I was 15, which you can't do anymore. But when you're 15, in
Wow.
back then, USA BMX let you. And so I was a sophomore in high school racing pro, and yeah, my parents were like, education's important, and you're going to go to college even though you're racing a bike. And so um, I started school. I broke my back when I was 17, and so I was in physical therapy a lot
Wow.
for that. And I thought that, oh, physical therapy, like this physical therapist I was working with was really instrumental in getting me back on the bike so that I could race again. And so I thought that that would be a really good career path for me, would be to be a physical therapist and work with athletes. So graduated high school, got scholarship funding through NBL at the time, which was cool, and went to Brigham Young University, and I
Okay.
started my degree in athletic training. And as I was taking all these athletic training classes in preparation to, look at becoming a physical therapist down the line, I was starting to take physiology classes and sports performance classes and nutrition classes. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. And I was like learning how to fuel my body better, and I was learning how recovery worked. And so I really started to get into the performance aspect of it, and I ended up changing my major to exercise science. And at that thought, at that point, I kind of thought, well, maybe that's a route that I want to go down, is coaching. Um, I graduated in 2007, and then it was full steam ahead trying to, prep for the Beijing Olympics in '08. And then,
Mhm.
I took a long break from school while I was working on that. And then as I was starting to kind of wind down my career, I was quite close with the coach I was working with at the time, James Herrera, and I asked him, like, what do you think about this? And he said, well, it's not an easy world for a woman to be in BMX and coaching. And he says, but you've earned the respect of a lot of people. And he says, if you're going to do it, you should do it right away. Don't wait to coach, because you're still relevant as an athlete. And so I started working with a couple of athletes my final year competing, just some younger juniors, and then USA Cycling gave me the opportunity to help with their development camps. And yeah, I pretty much stepped right into a coaching role and a partnership with USA Cycling, who I've been with now for, wow, 10, 11 years. 10
Wow.
years, yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool. I was
Yeah.
gonna say, so basically how I came to find you was I started watching the races, and as I was watching the UCI races and then the USA BMX races, I started seeing you more and more in the background
Holding
at
an
a lot.
iPad.
Right, at a
Yeah.
lot of events. So I was like, man, it's got to be somebody important. Like you just kept popping up next to all these people. So I was like,
Yeah.
got to be somebody important. So then I ended up reaching out to my buddy over there at All Things BMX, and I was like, do you know who this person is? I want to interview this person. And he just looked at me and was like, I know who she is. And I was like, seriously? And he was like, yeah. So then that's how I was able to get your name and like was able to track you down through
Oh,
Instagram.
cool.
Thank God,
Yeah.
technology. But
Yeah.
I was just like, wow, man, because I saw you, and I was like, man, she's got to be important. Like, I got to get her on the show. So, but how much do you say? I mean, I guess one of the questions I would ask is when you're out there training and you're watching the people that you coach and everything. How hard is it to not like want to be like, oh man, I can still do it and get out there?
Oh yeah, I mean it's hard, and even from the time I retired, I mean I was only 28. I wasn't very old.
Right.
But I wanted to have a kid, and that was really the defining moment for me. As my husband and I had been married 7 years, I wanted to start my family, and I just felt like I was 28, and that was the right time for me. I wanted to walk away on my own terms, which I did, and I felt really good about it. I finished the World Cup season in 2013, ranked second in the world, and I was like, let's go out on a high note.
Yeah.
And I got pregnant and had my daughter, and started coaching. But there was definitely a time, at least for the first couple of years, even moving into the Rio Olympics, where I was like, man, and I would get out there and I'd still ride, right? I'd still be up on the Supercross hill with the kids and riding. And I even did a Devo camp where I jumped the berm jump for the boys because they weren't sending it. And I was like, look, I'm retired and I'm a girl and I'm sending it. So um, but I'd say, as time has gone on, I still will get on the bike and I enjoy it, but I don't have that desire anymore to race.
Right.
And for me now, it's just something that's enjoyable to do with the kids. And every now and then, I'll get. I think the last time I got up on the hill was when I was helping Peyton actually prep for Tokyo. So it's been a little bit since I've sent the hill, but yeah, I mean, it's been long enough now that I don't quite have that desire anymore. I'm happy just to be on the sidelines watching them,
Right.
and helping them, and watching them pursue their goals and dreams.
Now, how old is your daughter?
My daughter's 9.
Is she racing?
She's not. She likes to ride.
Okay.
She's good. And my son, I have a 4-year-old too, and he's a
Okay.
little ripper. So he's ready. I think he's going to be my BMXer. But no, she just likes to go out there and have fun. So she has raced. She has a license. She still holds the USA BMX license, but
Right.
she kind of prefers the mountain bike. Don't tell, but she likes to kind of roll around out on the mountain bike, which is fine. And she likes to do swim team. And my
Nice.
intent was never to kind of make my kids follow the same path I did. What I want
Right.
for them is to find their own passion. And so,
Right.
she's doing her own thing, and it's great.
Right. I was that's kind of how it was with my son. That's how I came back when COVID started. I was like, just coming across it, and I was like, you know what? I'm like, I remember I used to race. Let me get a bike. So, and let me I showed my son some videos, and I was like, I think he can, he can get into this. So, brought him out the track, got him a bike, did a few practices, and then he was just like, yeah, nah, this isn't me, and went right back to playing Fortnite.
Yeah.
And I was just like, all right, well, I just wanted to expose you to, some other things that was outside of your realm. So, that you can see that there's other things out here. So we had fun doing it, and I still race and still have fun. And a big part of it for me racing is I like to just tell people where I'm going. And I'm a big guy. I'm 6 foot, 300 something pounds or whatever. So when I tell them I'm on a BMX bicycle, they're like, really? And I'm like, well, let me pull up these nationals. Let me show you where I'm
Yeah,
at.
check it out. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
So I totally enjoy all that. But so when you were riding and you were at your peak, how long would you say it would take you to get used to a new track?
I mean, it was a different era back then, especially at the World Cup level, like
Mhm.
Supercross level, because these tracks weren't established. And so, every pro I think says that their era was the glory era. But I think that that's kind of a lost art that we don't
Right,
have now, at least at the World Cup level, because it's, how many times have we gone to Papendal? Rock Hill is always the same. You know, Belgium, Zolder's always the same. So, but back in our area, it was like you'd show up and there'd be a new track. So we go to South Africa, they build the track and they're working out the kinks. Copenhagen, I remember there was like plywood and the jumps weren't even fully finished the first year we went there for a World Cup. And
wow,
we did one in Norway where they were like laying bricks in the turn. It was an indoor arena. It was really cool. So that was part of the sport, was having to adapt very quickly. And you got one, maybe 2 practice days. These days it's a totally different ballgame. Like all the countries come in a week early, ourselves included. Like we're not exempt on this, right? Team USA
right,
does this too. So we go into a track that we've already ridden a million times, and then we're going to ride it for a week before the World Cup anyway, or 2 weeks maybe, so that everyone's got it so fine tuned. So there's a little bit of a lost art of like having to get used to a track, um, that I think was kind of fun, and just seeing
right,
who could adapt quickly. And that was something that I would say, maybe better at than some, in the ability to just be like, okay, we got to send it, we got to figure it out. We have an hour and a half of practice, and we're racing tomorrow. So yeah, but it's not like that anymore, because you can go ride any track for as long as you want, especially if it's a track you're trying to get dialed in. I mean,
right,
even the Olympics, right? That the SQY track in France is there. Everyone's already ridden it. It's the first time in an Olympic history that I know of that it's been like that. Tokyo and Beijing and
they're all
London and
made for the
Rio,
event. Yeah,
they were just made for the event. No one rode them. There was a test event. They made changes after the test event, and then you went and raced. But now everybody's been on that France track, and everyone's going to be riding that France track from now till the games.
yeah, yeah. Now, are you going to be out there as well?
I hope so. Yeah. We're not. Nothing's finalized yet, but that's what I'm hoping for. So.
Okay, okay. Um, did you go to the last? Not the. We already know what happened with this last Worlds in Rock Hill. You were at the one before in, was it Glasgow?
Glasgow,
Okay.
Scotland.
I heard that first jump was crazy. Like it was something that was like sending a bunch of I guess the regular riders were getting hurt on the first obstacle.
So I can't really speak to the amateurs, because I
Okay.
was there with the elite team,
Well,
right? And
right.
so our focus was on the elite. It was a technical track. I thought it was
Right.
fantastic. across the board. A lot of people really enjoyed it.
Hmm.
A lot of people struggled with it. It was what I would say is pretty typical of a UK track. I think Clark Kent, those guys were the ones that built it.
Okay.
But yeah, it was steep, it was technical, and I know a lot of American riders, like the amateurs that went, did struggle with it, with
Hmm.
how technical it was. But I wasn't super involved with their program because that is the challenge racing is all run by USA BMX, while the
Right.
elite racing is run by USA Cycling. So I was kind of on a different side of it, but I did watch some of the challenge racing.
Okay. What was your biggest injury and what happened?
Oh, that's a long story, but I'll try to pare it down. Um, so the day before I was supposed to leave for the London Olympics, I made the London Olympic team in 2012.
Okay.
Um, Bags were packed. My family was already over there. I was super excited, and I went out for my last training session in my Olympic kit because we were making sure we didn't need any final alterations. I had two custom Olympic bikes made for the games, and
Nice.
I switched um, from the bike I had been riding to the one I hadn't been riding just to make sure it was all good. And I had 4 efforts for the day, so it wasn't like a very big session. And I was in my middle of my first effort on the second straightaway there on the London replica track in Chula Vista. And, I'm going pretty fast, 30 miles an hour, and my chain derailed. So my chain actually came off the rear cog, which is super weird on a BMX bike, but it came off the rear cog and it locked up my back wheel right as I was hitting a jump. So it threw me over the
Jeez.
front. I landed on my right side. I remember like as it happened thinking like, don't put your hand out because it was pretty high, right where I was at. And so I was like, don't put
Right.
your hand out, don't put your arm out. I don't want to break anything. I'm supposed to go to London tomorrow. And I fell on my right side. I lacerated my liver. I punctured my lung. I
Oh,
lost
jeez.
consciousness pretty quick. When I came to, a lot of from what happened from then on is kind of a blur. But the long story short, I had 4 operations to save my life. They had to intubate me. They couldn't get my liver to stop bleeding, and I sat in a hospital bed for 14 days and watched the Olympics on my phone.
Oh, jeez.
So yeah, it's pretty sad story at the time. I'm grateful for what I went through now because
Hmm.
it has given me a lot more understanding and empathy for my athletes from what they go through, both with injuries and with heartbreak and loss and struggling with just the whole Olympics and what it is and what it
Right.
means. Um, but I'd say that was my worst one. Almost killed me.
And you came back and continued to race from that?
Yeah, I did. So I didn't want to end my career on that note, right? Like
Right.
that just seemed like the way I didn't want to go out in the sport. I thought about making a push for the Rio Games,
Hmm.
and kind of waffled back and forth on that. But like I said, my husband and I had talked, and we were kind of ready to start our family. So I made a big push in 2013, just for the World Cup Series, and had a great year, one of my best years probably in my career. And yeah, I finished second in the world behind Mariana, who was the gold medalist, and
Right.
I was second. And yeah, I walked away in Chula Vista. It was the final World Cup in 2013. And so, yeah, I had a great year that last year, and I was really glad that I got back out there and kind of overcame
Yeah.
that the fears and the injury, and was able to prove myself, and then walk away on my own terms and not be, feeling like I was ending my sport because of a horrific crash.
Now, with that being said, and the big emphasis on mental health, what steps did you take towards getting over those hurdles to get yourself back out there once you realized your body was okay?
I had a lot of help. Yeah, I had a lot of help. I was working with some amazing sports psychologists and counselors at the time,
Hmm.
or who were just helping me navigate. I mean, really, for me, it was less the fear of racing as much it was overcoming the heartbreak of missing the games, what I felt like was my games.
Right.
It's hard to say how I would have done there, but I had won a World Cup leading up to that, and I was definitely very excited about the opportunity to try to win a medal, and so there was a lot of motivation, I think, to push through all of that just to get out there and prove that I could still do it.
Right.
Um, Getting back on the track for the first time, where it happened, because it happened at our training facility in Chula Vista. I didn't want to jump that jump for a while, even though it wasn't the jump's fault. It was my bike's fault, and it was kind
Right.
of a weird accident, but
Right.
you know, it's just kind of one of those things. You're gonna do it or not do it, and that's kind of what I told myself is like, you have a choice. I don't have to do this. I don't have to race a bike again. In fact, most of my family, my husband didn't want me to, but I had a choice, and if it's what I wanted to do, I might as well just do it and not sit there. And I think, you know, the hardest thing is when you're in that waffling period. And if you can just make that decision and commit to it, it's like make it black and white. You can do this or not. And yeah, I think the first time I hit that jump after, it was such a relief to be like, okay, like we got this. We're still here. So
Right. Right. Okay. Did your husband race, or did he ever race?
no, not BMX. He races a road bike and he's raced his mountain bike. But I wanted a personal and private life outside of my professional life. And from a pretty young age, I mean, when I was younger, like a teenager, I dated BMXers because that's who you're with all the time, you know?
Right. Right.
But, you know, once I got into college, I was like, it was really nice to just have a separate, like, this is my professional life, this is my career. I want a personal life that I can turn off from my career and be
Right.
with. And so for me, it was really good because he helped kind of balance me. I was very, like, hyper focused on what I wanted to do and just spooled up all the time on, you know, the next race and what can I do to be faster and better. And so it's really nice to have that balance outside of
Right.
it. But he's been super supportive and it's been really fun in our, you know, my post BMX race career to start doing some things together, like mountain bike racing together and road racing together. Um, yeah, it's been pretty fun.
Awesome. With what I've learned from like interviewing a few of the pros now is everything is all BMX with them. BMX, BMX, BMX. I train, I ride, I race. I train, I ride, I race. And I'm like, so what about your personal life? And it doesn't seem like they really have time for one. With knowing what you know now, would you say that they would need to slow that down and maybe incorporate that, or just whatever feels right for you, just keep it going?
I mean, I think it was probably depends on who you talk to be honest. You know, there is always a perception too that BMX is everything.
Mhm.
And I'll use Elise as an example because she's a friend of mine. I've known her for a really long time. We kind of grew up together in the sport, and you know, so to a lot of people, it might think that like Elise is all BMX because
Mhm.
she is. She's great, and she's married to Sam, who's a BMXer, and like he's her coach, and so they're integrated very well,
Right.
and they do a great job of that. But she also has a great personal life too. You know, she has friends outside of the sport. She goes and does things out of the side of the sport. She has hobbies outside of the sport. I think that is something that comes with maturity
Mhm.
and a little bit with age. And it is something I do encourage my riders. It's like, okay, and I remember specifically I had a coach, Sean Dwight, even and I was even married at the time, who like gave me a rest week and I didn't want to take a rest week. And I was like, I just want to train, train, train. And he was like, you need to get a life. And I was so offended. Like, what do you mean I need to get a life? And he's like, you need to get a life outside of BMX. And I was like, I don't want a life outside of BMX. I just want to race BMX and win. So it's a very normal mindset to have for sure.
Right.
But I also think that sometimes it can be debilitating too,
Mhm.
and it makes those like losses even harder when you come up short on a goal and you don't have anything else. And so I definitely encourage my athletes like go try something new. Like let's find a new hobby in your downtime. Go golfing or like Peyton likes to go kickboxing or like, you know, just do some things to get outside of BMX for a little bit. And
Right.
then when you can come back to BMX for whatever you're doing, whether you're training or racing or whatever, you're still excited about it. And instead of it being the only thing you know.
So okay, so when it came to racing and your prep, what type of music did you listen to get you in the mood?
Oh, it varied. I had a playlist, you know, that and I still have, you know, playlists that go and, you know, most of the time it's rock. But definitely so back in, you know, my era we had time trials, which was really fun. And you got to pick a time trial song. And so my time trial song for my whole career was Motley Crue, "Kickstart My Heart." And so you know, a little bit of '80s big hair metal,
Right.
which
Right.
just kind of I think reminded me of my dad. You know, my dad's the one that got me into the sport. But you know, sometimes I needed something a little bit more mellow to kind of calm me down, or something. Sometimes I needed something a little more hyped.
Right.
After I
Right.
started training with a French coach, it was like all EDM and like house music. I was into that for a little while, but you know,
Okay. Okay.
you can't go wrong with rock and roll, or not
Right.
in BMX.
Right. It's one thing too. Like when I tell people, I'm like, I think, I mean, I don't know how what your age group is, but in my age group, we had the radio played such a variety of music. You had rap, you had country, you had hip hop, you had rock and roll, Billy Joel. Like it was a variety of everything on one station. Like back then, before everything
Yeah.
became so like segregated to where this is
Segmented.
the rap,
Yeah.
the rap station. This is the this station. This is that station. Like we learned to listen to everything back then. So like when you're sitting there listening to like a Nirvana song or whatever, everyone's looking at you like, "How you know that?" I'm like, "Dude, it was on the radio when I grew up, like MTV. It just
Yeah.
everything just played on MTV, so
Well, they don't
we
have
heard it all."
MTV. That's why MTV's
Right.
not really a thing anymore. Yeah.
Right. So, but okay. So, what's your favorite movie?
Oh well, I mean, I have to say Rad because it's a BMX movie. You can't go
See,
wrong
and
with that.
this was always my argument. I would say Pee Wee's Big Adventure, and they go, "That's not a BMX movie," and I'm like, "Nah, maybe not." But there were people who rode BMX in that
There you
movie.
go. Well, all right. Yeah. Well, it's fun. I say Rad, and people are like, "Man, you're so old." And I'm like, it came out before I was born. To be fair,
Right.
like I wasn't born yet. It does predate me, but
Right.
it
Right.
was like, it was a BMX movie, and once I'm racing BMX, it's the only BMX movie, really. And so I watched it all the time when I was a kid, and now it's just nostalgic.
Right.
So it's
Right.
hilarious. Yeah.
The So what exactly are you racing now?
I'm racing road bikes, which I never ever would have guessed I would do. My dad did a little bit of road racing when I was younger in a BMX, and I made fun of him. I thought it was so nerdy. I was like, "What are you doing wearing spandex? That's not cool. You used to be
That's not
cool."
cool.
Um, and it was never the intended path I was going. I retired from BMX racing, and I'm still young, so I started racing mountain bikes professionally. And
Right.
so I was racing downhill, I was doing dual slalom, I started kind of dabbling into enduro. I had my second child. We moved to the East Coast, and there's a severe lack of mountains here. Like, we live in a swamp. There's no mountains. And so that made racing mountain bikes really hard when I was like, I
Right.
had to travel. Like, we'd have to go to Vermont or North Carolina. Like, there was just no mountain bike racing accessible. The pandemic, happened, and I started doing a lot of indoor cycling just to get fit while I had this little baby, and he
Mhm.
was napping. And so I started just building up my fitness. I got very involved in like indoor esports cycling, which is its own like crazy weird world. And then from there out on the road, and I fell in with just a really great community of people here in the area.
Mhm.
Road racing is pretty big in my area and in the Mid Atlantic, and they were like, "Hey, you're kind of good at this." And I was like, "Still kind of nerdy." And I'm coaching BMX, like I can't be a nerd.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, I started doing it, and I thought it was like, wow, this is really fun. And the cool thing is like I'm still progressing, and even I'm 38 years old, and so I still feel like I haven't even reached my capacity for racing on the road.
Right.
And I've had a lot of success, and I've won a lot of races now, and it's been kind of a whole new like professional career. I'm racing professionally now for the third time. So, I did
Wow.
BMX, and then I did mountain bikes, and now I'm racing on the road. And I'm with an awesome team of women that are just super like-minded and super fun to be around. And it's not our full-time jobs for any of us, and so it makes
Mhm.
it more, it's an enjoyable experience. And
Right.
I still get to be involved with BMX as a coach, and still get to be a mom. So I kind of feel like I'm getting to have my cake and eat it too, which
Mhm.
you know is pretty cool.
There you go. That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So now when it comes to training with everybody, what would you say? How would you say? I guess I want to say when you have to show somebody like the rider something new, do they adapt pretty well to it? Like, do they just go all in on what you're saying? Like, trust me, this is how I want you to approach this, or is it something that you have to like convince them? Like, all right, this is what I would do because you can actually show them how you did it.
It definitely depends on the rider, right? And so that relationship of trust between the coach and the athlete that gets built
Mhm.
over time. And I always tell a rider when I'm working with them, like it takes me a year to really start to figure the athlete out and to build them. The differences between, say, a Peyton and a Cameron,
Mhm.
like a Peyton right now and Cameron Larson, like they could not be more different in their approach, in how they respond to things, and how they like to get feedback. And yes, they both do sprints, and they both go to the track, and they both go to the gym, and they both have a lot of the same workouts, but
Mhm.
their approach is very different. And so just learning how to talk to the rider, I think is the most important part of the coaching job, and learning how to explain things. Both of them really like to understand the process.
Hmm.
And some like Lexus Colby, like she's fantastic. Like she's just so enthusiastic, and she's like a sponge because she came in kind of later to the game for structured training, and so for her everything is just like still really new, and she's still really excited. And yeah, Cutter Williams is another one too. It's and so once that's like that, just with the enthusiasm and excitement, and they don't need things explained to them yet because they're still just learning. Whereas with Cameron, we're sitting down and we're discussing, and I'm telling him, here's what I think. What do you think? Because at that stage in an athlete's career, when they're more mature and they've had, I've been working with Cam for 9 years now,
Yeah.
that his input is valuable, and he also knows what works and what hasn't worked for him. So I definitely like more of a collaborative effort once they get a little bit older. But yeah, when they're younger, sometimes it's just, no, just trust me. I know what I'm doing. Um, yeah.
Okay. When now, when you're with your tablet, when you go back to them after, I guess after the moto, are you showing them the whole like, all right, this is where you were, this is what you done, this is what you could have what you could have done different, and pretty much running like a playbook?
Again, it depends on the rider. So
Hmm.
some riders like the feedback right away. And I don't think there's a right or wrong here, to be fair. So, if we're looking at across the board, it's not like it needs to be. Some of them want to know specific things, some of them want to see it, some of them don't. What I have found is definitely the best is at the end of a race day. I like
Hmm.
to sit down one on one and we debrief and we talk all the things, everything. And this is, practice days and race days, everything that went well, everything that we could improve on moving forward. But in the middle of the moment, especially once we get into knockout rounds, quarters, semis, mains, um, a lot of times I'll just send it to them so they can see it. And then if they want to talk about it, we'll have a conversation. But it's also kind of a delicate time. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. Some of them like it right away, and some of them want to wait and just kind of process it. Yeah.
Okay. And would you say now, have you trained just U.S. riders, or are you allowed to train U.S. and outside of U.S.?
So I'm a contract coach for USA Cycling, which means, I'm contracted to work with a number of athletes that I have agreed upon with them. And then I have private athletes as well. So yeah, I'm not currently coaching anyone that's not an American, but I have at times,
Okay.
when my capacity has allowed for it. So yeah, right now I'm just pretty focused on the core group that I have, but there's no contractual, like, I can't work with someone that's not an American. It's just a lot easier when they are, and when
Mm.
we're traveling together as a team, I have better access to, things and resources and all of that when they are American. Yeah.
Do you when you do go with them to events, do you ever bring your bike with you just so you can get out there and ride a little bit? I know you're not competitive with it. Do you ever think I'm just gonna bring my bike so I can just get out there and just take a couple laps?
I always bring a bike, but these days it's a road bike. If I'm being completely honest. In the beginning, yes, and a lot of times too, like Peyton has two bikes. Like a lot of the riders will have two bikes, and I'll hop on their bike. But it's also like there's so many rules these days too about like you can't get on the track if especially if you're not
Mm,
racing or all of that. It's not. I don't have time
right.
because the entire time I'm usually with them when I'm at the track and I'm working with them. And if we're not on the track doing stuff, we're in the pit area prepping or debriefing or whatever it is, right? So my time to ride is usually at 5:30 in the morning when they're still sleeping,
Oh,
before I
yeah,
have to actually work.
right.
So yeah, I mean, if I get out on the track, it's usually more if like there's a training, like if we're training in Tulsa, if we're training in Chula Vista, and we're not at a race,
Hmm.
that's usually when I can have an opportunity to get out there.
Okay. What's your worst travel story?
Oh, that's an easy one because it was
You came right to the front
right
too.
to the front. China, Beijing for the test event. Actually, it might have been Taiyuan. Either way, we were flying to Beijing. And I was stuck in a middle row on Air China, or middle seat on Air China. And the lady next to me was just getting sloshed, like just getting so drunk. And they shut her off, like the flight attendants shut her off, wouldn't let her have any more alcohol. And I mean, the flight itself was like 15 hours or something ridiculous. And she passes out and she wakes up. She starts getting the guy across the aisle to get her to order alcohol. And at some point she sits up and she's like peed herself and she's peed the seat.
Oh,
And
jeez.
so she like takes her drink, and remember, I'm in a middle seat and I'm already like, this is so already annoying and disgusting. And, I'm trying to fly out to go to a race, and I'm like, yeah, anyway. And she like spills her drink on the seat and she throws up. She was just a nightmare. It was a train
Oh,
wreck. And
jeez.
yeah, that was easy. Flying to China, 15
I thought
hours next to a
I thought you
drunk
say
old
like you
lady.
lost your bike or they damaged something, but oh man, that's even worse.
No, I know. I actually, knock on wood, I had a pretty good experiences that way. Flying with bikes, I didn't have issues. Luggage, yeah. I mean, I lost clothes and whatnot, but I always managed to end up with my bike.
Okay. Now, usually, so because I don't know how that goes down, but when you go out to fly out to an event, how much do you go out ahead of time? Is it like just a couple days before the event, a couple weeks before the event, so you
Like
guys
an
can get?
international trip?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what my ability is with my kids. So I'm a mom. I have two
Hmm.
kids. Sometimes the team will go out weeks in advance, and I just
Hmm.
don't have the ability to be there that early because my kids have
Okay.
school. My
Right.
husband is in the military, so their schedule and my schedule sometimes isn't the same. Typically for any kind of international trip, we want to be there, a week to 10 days in advance.
Hmm.
Every now and then there'll be like a last minute slide in. Like, there's a couple riders that like to just kind of come in last minute, but for the most part, the staff and the team will be there on the ground a week before an event.
Okay.
And then if there's multiple events, you just stay in between, like in South America or in Europe, and then we're just staying there until the next one.
So when you were racing, was it stay focused, stay the course, or was it we're in a new country, let's have some fun?
Um, it was both. Yeah. I mean, like, I I learned I was and I don't remember if maybe it was my mom, like, she was pretty wise, especially when I was young and I was traveling. She was like, don't take this for granted. The fact that you're getting to someone is paying for you to go pedal your bike in a different country. And so I've
Right.
tried that everywhere that I have gone, and I have tried this as a coach too with my riders when we're going to a new place,
Right.
to at least one day on a down day when we're not, training, to go experience the culture. Whether that's we're going to go see a historical site or we're going to go eat some food that in a part of town, we're going to go see something. I
Right.
think that's important, and I'm really glad because it's I've been some really cool places. Like I took a boat tour through the fjords of Norway. Like I mean, who can say that they did that and USA Cycling paid for it? you know, um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I got to see the Great Wall of China. I
Wow.
got to go to Japan. Like I've been to Africa 3 times. I got to go on a safari. Like we went on a safari twice when we went to Africa. So I think that is something too that's valuable that I try to pass on to my riders is there is a time to be locked in for sure. We're not screwing around when it's race time. We're not screwing around the day before the race. We're not going out to clubs and partying. Like that's not the experience. But it
Right.
is worth remembering these places that we go because there's a chance you'll never go back. I don't know if
Right.
I'm ever going to go back to some of those countries, and I'm super glad that I had that opportunity. And
Totally.
usually we try to at least one day figure that out for the athletes. We got to see a castle in Scotland the first year we went to Scotland, and it's like it's just cool. We try not to burn them out or do something that's going to be physically exhausting, but yeah, try to appreciate those places because it's a really unique opportunity.
Right. Right. Okay. That's man, the things you've done.
Yeah, pretty lucky.
Right? So okay. So one of my other questions is do you still have your race bike or a race bike from when you were racing?
Yeah, I have a complete in the garage. I have a GT Speed Series, and I actually
Okay.
have one of my Olympic bikes right here. It's just the frame.
Okay.
So this one wasn't the one I crashed on. This is the one that I didn't crash on, but this is one of the custom bikes that was made for the games
Okay.
for me, which was pretty cool. So I
Yeah.
have that, and I still have 3 or 4 other frames that were, custom frames done for me that were pretty cool. And I have 2 complete BMX bikes. I have an aluminum Speed Series. I have a carbon Speed Series in the garage. Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Do you know, what's the weirdest place someone's asked for your autograph?
The weirdest place, like on their
Airport.
bodies.
No, no.
Oh, I've had that.
No. I meant like,
Um,
yeah, I meant like location, like airport, restaurant, school, when you were going
um,
to school.
yeah, I mean, when I was going to school, I was super like low key. Like I was get in, get out, you know? Like,
Okay.
I mean, yeah, when I was in high school, like I was competing professionally, but I was like, I was racing on the weekends. Same thing in college.
Right.
Um, yeah, there were restaurants, especially like around the Olympic times, like so around the Beijing and London Olympics, and
Hmm.
when there was a lot more media and things going on.
Right.
There were definitely places. I think maybe the most awkward was when I was in the hospital, like going before the games, and I was like,
Right.
no, sorry, not the place.
Right.
Um, but yeah, less so these days. Now I'm just the person with the blue iPad. So,
Right. Right. What would be the one thing that you would tell your younger self if you got a chance to go back and do it all over again?
um, yeah, I just enjoy it more, I think. Not be so hard on myself. I was pretty hard on myself, and I think that that's a very normal part of being a high performance athlete, is
Right.
just being so critical and being so focused on the performance. Um, so yeah, I mean, I talk a big game about going to these countries, but I had a very low moment in Papendal one year where I crashed in the motos and I didn't move on, and it was like the first time that had ever happened to me in my professional like World Cup career, right? I was always a staple in the final and I got motoed because I crashed and I called home and I was super upset. And my husband was like, "You're in the Netherlands. Like, go eat a stroopwafel." And I was just like, "You don't understand, like how, but you know." And so there were just times like that where, and it's
Right.
very hard to find that when you're dealing with big disappointments for sure.
Right.
But yeah, I think I would just tell myself like, there's a lot more coming in your life that's great, and enjoy it. Enjoy the opportunity more.
Out of all the pros that you trained, if you were stuck in an elevator for 3 hours, who would you choose?
All the pros I've trained, stuck in an elevator for 3 hours. Uh, or maybe Peanut. She'd always have a game. She'd have something to play. Yeah, she'd have a Rubik's Cube, New York Times game. She'd come up with some like game for us to play, I think, to try and keep us entertained. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Okay. What out of did you ever get to test any parts? Like when you were racing, they're like, "Oh, we got this new brand, this new company, this
Oh,
new."
all the time. Yeah, all the time. Yeah, I didn't like that part of it. Um, yeah, just different like cranks and hubs. I mean, we tried oval chain rings. Um, most of the stuff like I wouldn't say ever really panned out. They wanted me to test like the shifting idea that they had. I think Barry ended
Mm,
up testing that one. Um, yeah, I mean, it's a cool part of like product development too.
right.
But it's also like sometimes when you're like, am I the first one to try this? When it's something like a hub or something like that. But yeah, I got a lot of cool prototype stuff like forks and I'm trying to think. That was yeah, been a long time, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I got I think my last major question. So you went to school, you said you went to college and everything, right?
Hmm.
And I had this conversation with my friend the other day. A lot of people think I'm weird for asking this question, but do you think that we went to the moon?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Do you?
I'm not in the non-moon camp. I just can't wrap my head around not going there. Yeah.
That's kind of how
Definitely
my
team.
friend is
I'm
with it.
definitely team. I'm team moon. Are you not team moon?
I am
You think we
not.
didn't go?
I
You're
don't
not
think
team
we
moon?
went, but when I say that, I always have to always say that follow up is I'm not a flat earther because they always think that
You're a
those
flat
go.
earther. Okay. Yeah. Well.
I'm not a flat earther. They
Oh, you're
think they
not.
go.
Okay. I was gonna
No,
say
they think those go
that's.
hand in hand, but I'm like, I don't think we went to the moon, but I know that the Earth is round, so I'll go there. But the moon thing, I'm just like, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. And so but it's something I always like to ask. That or if you got any good ghost stories. Do you believe in ghosts? Those are the two questions I like to always ask.
Oh, for sure, ghosts. I don't know if I have a ghost story, but I for sure am a ghost believer. Yeah. They're floating around out there for sure. There's just way too many weird things that happen for it not to be a ghost.
I agree 110%. The okay, so one other thing too. So you've come back from I'm trying to put it into your time frame of racing. When you first started racing, you had the pads too, right? Like with the frame pad, the handlebars,
Oh
and
yeah.
the
Oh yeah.
I was trying to tell that to Alexis Alden when I was interviewing her the other day. I was just like, you don't understand. If you didn't have those pads, you weren't racing.
Yeah. Well, then remember, then there was and maybe this was when you were out of BMX, but there was an era too where they were like stick-on ones because you didn't want to have the full pad on the frame, and so you just like a little sticker pad. I had a pad
Oh,
sponsor. I mean, we all did like when I was 15, 16, like because you had to have that crap on your bike. I mean, thank
right.
goodness we're out of that era. That was a terrible era.
Yeah. So I guess that's it. That's all I got. And thank you
Oh,
for your time.